G'day, I'm Bill Flowers from the Thylacine Research Unit, and I'm here today with Dr. Sam. Dr. Sam, can you tell me a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Bill. Great to be here with you on this beautiful day. I'm Sam. I have a doctorate in psychology, and as with most psychologists, that means we look into behaviours, memories, perceptions, and understanding how the brain works in people.
Okay, so one thing that we haven't really tackled here while looking for the Tasmanian tiger is people's perceptions. We've sort of touched on it a bit, but we really want to get an expert's opinion of people seeing things, what would make somebody see something, what would make them a bad witness, that sort of a thing. So maybe kicking off with, can people perceive things wrongly? Can they make up or fill up the gaps in their own mind of what they're seeing? How could somebody not see a thylacine but it not actually really be there?
Yeah, and I understand what you say. There's actually quite a lot of research in this area, not from necessarily looking for animals in the wilderness, but from eyewitness testimony in a court situation if there's been a criminal act. And so there's the research behind that. Psychologists have looked into that because we've had so many cases in eyewitness testimony where there's been wrongful convictions, but the eyewitnesses themselves have absolutely sworn black and blue that the person that they saw was the person who did the criminal act. How can that be? But we know from different types of research studies, so field studies, when it's actually happened, to set up studies where the researchers have had a lineup of different looking people and had somebody come in and say who was the perpetrator when the perpetrator wasn't actually in the lineup. The interviewer or the examiner, the researcher in that case, would simply say, can you point somebody out? The subject who had seen the eyewitness would point somebody out because there's an expectation there to see someone when actually that person wasn't in there. The response from the interviewer can also influence how convicted that person is, how much they believe that they were right in their choice.
Okay, so sounds like false memory.
A little bit of false memory,
Yeah.
but then a lot of our memories are false memories.
Yeah, so I'll recount something that happened to me a couple of decades ago.
Sure.
I saw what I was absolutely positive was a brush-tailed possum run into my house. Okay, and at that time I had lots of dealings with brush-tailed possums, ring-tailed possums. I identified it specifically as brush-tailed possum, grey, and I went into the house to see what the possum was doing in the house. It turned out to be a grey cat.
Right.
I only got a fleeting glimpse, but somehow my mind filled in all the gaps.
Yes.
And that's what the mind. Convinced.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the mind does. The way in which we perceive things is not what we see. So our eyes are just picking up pieces of code, if you like, and they pick up pieces of code that we pay attention to. They never pick up the full picture. What we see, or what we believe we've seen, is our brain filling in the gaps. What you pay attention to is only little pieces. I know one of your colleagues said before in one of the earlier episodes the idea of collective memory, and if you're walking in the bush by yourself, you pay attention to more things, you're able to find your way back. If there's three of you, you don't pay attention quite as much because there's different people picking up different pieces of information. The brain then puts bits and pieces, fills the gaps with what each of you are saying. Okay. In your case, you've picked up little pieces of code, but your brain is filling it in with the context, what you believe, what you want to see, instead of what is actually the facts of the situation.
At the time I was hand raising both ringtail possums and brush-tailed possums. I didn't have any of them. There was just a gap between my time of looking after these marsupials. So I wonder if that's what coloured my perception. I also wonder, when you look around Tasmania, there's images of the thylacine everywhere.
That's
almost
right.
in every town, on number plates, absolutely everywhere. Could that have a bearing on people's perceptions of what they see?
It could have a bearing. If they see an animal that has a similar colouring, a similar kind of shape, and they're already attuned to, I'm in the right location, there is a possibility that these animals still, you know, might be a small possibility, but they might be there. Maybe I'll be the one to see it. So an enthusiasm, a motivation, and an emotion behind it. Add in there that there might be something to look like a stripe on its back, and the brain will fill in the rest of it. That can be a very convincing piece of code into your mind, and then you can be really attached to that.
It's kind of, Chris and I did an experiment, and it's one of our earlier videos where we're showing people quick photographs, and one of them had like a cutout thylacine in it.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. One of the responses we got was fox, because there was lots of stuff in the news at the time about fox. Somebody saw a little gingery colour in there, and they said fox. So is that an example of that sort of, you know,
what's on your mind, what's in the context, what you've heard of lately? These things tend to have, you've paid attention to them, so the brain is looking for them. When it fills up the piece of the picture that has been taken by your eyes, then it will fill it up with what is you've most paid attention to most recently.
So we're talking here about fleeting glimpses. So I wonder about those people who have seen a thylacine and they say, oh, I observed it from 10 metres away for 30 seconds or a minute, you know. That's sort of, it's going to be harder to fool yourself that way. So are we looking at either a genuine sighting or somebody telling porkies?
I think that's a really difficult one to answer, because if it is a genuine sighting, you would really want other evidence to back that up. There must be something else in the environment. Telling porkies, there would really be around, have they got a different motivation to not necessarily go with what they believe they've seen? And then the third option is, do they believe what they saw, even though it wasn't actually a thylacine?
Okay.
And that's the part where I think memory really plays in, because if you think you've seen something, you tell someone, their first reaction is a positive, oh, that's great, maybe you did. That reinforces your belief that what you saw was actually thylacine. The more of that positive reaction you get, the more you will absolutely hold on to that as truth, and it will be very difficult to move that away from that truth.
So it's almost like they're getting a reward by recounting the story, and maybe...
Yeah, and it's the way that our brain works, that it's not the person themselves doing it on purpose, it's that they are getting that reward, and it's reinforcing the initial thought that they may have had that this could be a thylacine.
So let me just sort of just think of a scenario here. Say somebody got a fleeting glimpse of what they think is a thylacine. They recount that story, but in the story it becomes a 5-second viewing, and the next time it could be a 10-second. Could that just escalate?
Yeah.
And can they absolutely believe that they've actually seen a thylacine for quite a long time?
Yeah, look, I think have a look at all of us in every story we tell of our past. I know I've got stories that I'll tell about my 5-year-old birthday party, and in each retelling of it, my memory thinks of a different detail, or it comes out a different way. It's not because I'm on purpose manipulating that story. It's that my memory changes and shifts over time, and that happens with everyone. It's a natural human response. So it is very difficult as a third party listening to the story going, well, hang on, you told me that it was only 3 seconds and now you've moved to 10 seconds. If you capture that early enough for someone, they may rethink through the details of the memory. But if they truly believe their memory, then it's very hard to shift that.